Hello, my name is Chris Haskell. I'm an architect working with MMW Architects in Missoula, Montana. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about shade, in particular how a group of concerned community partners gathered together to create shade shelters in places throughout our community, places that desperately needed it. All you really need to understand the importance of shade is to be outside on a sunny summer day. You'll notice the drastic difference between full sun and dappled light against your skin. Case in point, you see here one of my cycling buddies finding the shady side of the road on a recent ride up in the mountains. Shade is becoming ever more important, especially in urban environments where trees have been removed or are not allowed to grow. Many such locations are in lower income and underserved areas of our cities. This is what led Amy Sillenberg and Climate Smart Missoula to reach out to MMW with a seemingly simple, open-ended request. Help us design a shade shelter to provide refuge from the hot summer sun, specifically the hot summer sun in Missoula. Now, if you've never seen a group of designers brainstorm a solution for a single sentence prompt, here's an example. Please notice that we greatly enjoy this and jump at these opportunities to get together. Most great or even good designs do not come from one mind. It takes these types of sessions with multiple iterations to really bring them out. During this session, we asked, how does the earth move around the sun? What times of year most critically need shade? Where is the shade needed? What materials are available? Who is going to build these shelters? And how long are they supposed to last? To begin to answer these questions, we sketch out our ideas. It is important to discern what is critical to the project. We know we need shade. We know that summers are getting hotter. We understand that human societies are playing a part in making the summers hotter. By studying multiple designs and orientations, we're able to ensure that the structures will provide shade during the hottest parts of the year and through the warmer times of day. The main goal is to provide shade, but how else will we help mitigate the causes of our warming world? Can the materials and construction processes provide a positive impact? More about this in a minute. At this point, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about all the people that came together to make these shade shelters possible. Many people were involved in every step of the process, and it wouldn't have happened without every one of them. Here's a list of those who helped to bring these shelters to being. Climate Smart Missoula, City of Missoula Parks and Recreation, MMW Architects, Morrison Merrily Engineers, Odette Consulting Engineers, now DCI, Home Resource, Trees for Missoula, Bitterroot Welding, U.S. Forest Service, Boyce Lumber, Heritage Timber, Native Yards, Rick, Scott, Bloomberg Philanthropies, New Belgium Brewing Company, DNRC, Montana Urban and Community Forestry Association, and others that I'm regretfully missing at this time. In the next steps, as the design is progressing, we refine what is critical to make the project successful. The structures will provide a refuge from the heat of the sun, that is certain, but how does its physical manifestation show that it will not unduly add to the root causes of our warming world? We will need to choose appropriate materials that have low global warming potential. One such material is wood, and it is the primary material we have chosen for the shade shelters. In particular, we have selected wood reclaimed from construction waste and demolition, as well as reclaimed urban forest lumber. In Shade Shelter 1, we developed a design that capitalizes on the use of reclaimed 2x4 and 2x6 material. For the longer pieces required, we have urban forest lumber milled and some lumber donated from various sources. Other materials included are steel, glue, metal fasteners, and concrete foundations. Of note is the column of reinforcing bar resembling native grasses, which holds up the other end of the structure and keeps the composition balanced. Now on to how we got these built. The main components were fabricated at Home Resource and at Bitterroot Welding. Steve Nelson headed up the shop fabrication of the main structure and coordinated with Bob Atkinson to get the right steel connections in place. With their help, we fine-tuned the fabrication and details so that the whole thing would go together smoothly on site. Steve was instrumental during this phase. He selected the wood, worked out the map, coordinated volunteers, and was seen swinging a hammer. While fabrication was happening in the shops, work was started on site. Many volunteers gave time on site to ensure plantings were relocated, footings were dug, and concrete was poured. Here you see Amy and Rick preparing the formwork for the concrete footings. After weeks of hard work and collaboration, we were finally ready to install the structure on site. Given that most of the structure was fabricated in the shop, the site install mostly involved some field welding and a few screws, as well as at least one architect verifying it looked like the drawings. A big thanks to Bitterroot Welding for delivering the structure to the site in one piece, and to Steve for making sure all parts were accounted for and in the correct places. There was a bit of last-minute design as Sarah and Amy arranged the bouquet of number 8 rebar. All that is left now is to install the park bench and a bit of landscaping. And here is the completed shade shelter number 1, providing shade as intended. It really is a nice place to rest, located at the intersection of Kim Williams Trail and Waterwise Garden, with great views of the Clark Fork River and mountains beyond. Composition of reclaimed wood allows for a comforting quality of light to filter through. Being located more than 6 feet off the trail, you can safely social distance. What once provided shade in the form of trees is now given new life, only now as a piece of public architecture, once again providing shade. On to Shade Shelter 2. In this image, it's not quite summer yet, but we know it's coming, and luckily we were already designing for the next shade shelter. Shade Shelter 2 brought together the powerhouse duo of Climate Smart Missoula and Trees for Missoula to come up with some creative grant writing and new ideas. Trees for Missoula and Climate Smart Missoula really have similar goals in mind, and here they joined forces to think outside the box. Shade Shelter 2 is planned to last 20 plus years, while trees growing around it mature to provide longer lasting shade. The design of Shade Shelter 2 picks up where Shade Shelter 1 left off. Its main material is reclaimed and urban forest lumber, and it even has its own bouquet of rebar. The orientation of its site, however, demanded a different formal solution. Oriented more north to south, new solar studies were performed to discover the best design for the shade. One bit of design I should touch on before I go on is how to use random lengths of reclaimed lumber in a structural system. In order for the shelters to hold themselves up and not fall apart, some pieces needed to be continuous, and others also needed to dictate we also need to dictate the amount of overlap for the smaller pieces at each joint. You can see here how we color-coded the drawings to indicate the structural wood matrix. This arrangement provided for structure while still allowing for construction flexibility. Here are a few images of the site build. Much like Shade Shelter 1, the site install was made easier by most of the fabrication being done off-site. Again, Bitterroot Welding and Steve Nelson made sure the shelter went together correctly and safely. And again, some artistic license was taken to arrange the rebar column to make sure it had just the right look. Here is Shade Shelter number 2 on a particularly sunny day. A wonderful place for respite along the Bitterroot Trail just south of 6th Street. The knoll behind supporting native grasses and newly planted trees. I live not far from this shelter, and it's been great seeing people enjoy the space. If you happen by, take some time and rest a while. It was made for you. So what's next? You guessed it, Shade Shelter number 3, and it is in the works as I speak these words. It is scheduled to be installed later this summer in Bellevue Park, directly adjacent to the Bike Skills area. We wanted to do something a little bit different for Shade Shelter number 3. And given its proximity to bike riding kids, I thought it should be interactive and fun. The site's orientation called for either a long wall or a more enclosed space. We chose instead to make a movable wall, allowing for more open shelter and good visibility of roaming kids. The movable wall allows for adjustment depending on the time of day to create a shady seating area. Unique design challenges call for unique design solutions. We ended up with an old Jeep axle and a rack and pinion gear attached to a wheel, which is turned by the user to adjust for the shade. We're all excited to see Shade Shelter 3 installed and can't wait to share our hard work with all of the community. Please stay tuned for more. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.